just because sometimes I don't record it, and then people afterwards say, "Do you have a recording of it? I want to look at it again." And that way, if you and I both think it's worth sharing in public, we will. Otherwise, it'll just stay private between us. So
That sounds great.
that's the way it goes. Well, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
I'm 30 years old. I live in Mill Valley, California. I live with my fiance. I'm pretty ill all the time.
You don't look ill.
Thanks. Yeah, I was pretty healthy my whole life, and then I got ill around two and a half years ago, and that's been my whole life ever since. It's every single minute of every single day. It's pretty much.
Oh man,
So
that's really hard.
yeah. So, but yeah, I've been watching your videos a lot, and a lot, and of course Jordan and everybody. But I just thought it was strange the way everything lined up, like in my life with, your videos, Jordan, everything just kind of came together. And then when I saw your videos, I was like, I could not believe what you were talking about. I had read Mere Christianity, and I mean, it was working on my brain so hard. And then all of a sudden your video popped up, and I'd never been to your channel, and it was like C.S. Lewis and Jordan. And I was like, I was dying to ask Jordan about C.S. Lewis. So I was like, who is this guy? Like, I got to know about this guy. Like, I'm on the C.S. Lewis train right now. And Jordan was kind of the start of it for me. And,
Okay.
Yeah, he's changed my life for sure. I mean, but I was lucky enough to get to talk to him 2 times, which was kind of strange, just because I screwed up on the timing of the. He called me, and it was weird. It was like Jordan was on my cell phone. I was like, "What? This is so weird." His wife was nice enough to schedule another meeting, so yeah, I got to talk to him twice, and he was just so weirded out. He was just so. I guess the reason I emailed you is because I have a lot of issues. I've had a lot of experiences that I cannot explain, and I think even Jordan's explanations of them, I think, are kind of. I think you noticed a kind of a flaw in his thinking is the kind of stoicism that he kind of espouses, and I noticed that right away. I didn't before I got sick. I had to get sick, and then I'm half dying and watching Jordan's videos, sitting on the couch. I'm like, well, this is all good and fine, but what if you literally can't move?
Yeah.
Like, what if you can't think? And to me, that was a huge hole. I'm like, I can't carry my cross. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm done, man. Like, and I'm not just some guy who's on his computer and, he doesn't like his job too much. You know what I mean?
That's right. This is serious for you.
It's really serious. And so when he's talking about chaos and order, and he uses cancer as an example in multiple videos. And I watched those videos before I had cancer, and I didn't know what he was saying. But when I got cancer and started going through that thing and everything started going bad, it's like something happened where I felt that I was in kind of a Christian world all of a sudden. And in my mind's eye even, that suddenly heaven and hell were real considerations, that they were not silly things. Angels and things like that were very real.
Yeah.
And so I heard your talk with
Jonathan Bajeau.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I really like him, but I really disagree with kind of his well, he just said angels, these guys in the middle of the nation, they kind of just think that these are physical beings, and that's so silly and blah, blah. And I'm like, you cannot discount that at all.
Yeah.
and I'm not saying one way or the other, but my experiences have been so bizarre that this kind of, well, it's all just psychological, is just, I think, a real reduction of what we're talking about.
Yeah. No, I was surprised by my conversation with Jonathan. I don't want to read too much into it,
Yeah.
but I also got that same impression. And so if we talk again, which we probably will at some point, I'll want to pursue that more with him, because especially have someone who's lived and worked in Africa. Now, maybe he didn't work so much, in terms of Christian ministry like I did with Haitians in the Dominican Republic, but I don't have any problem assuming the ontology of the spiritual world. I just don't find that far-fetched at all.
Yeah.
And I don't see why I should.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel the same way. Yeah.
Well, do you want to share more about your experience?
Sure.
And again, if you share something and, this isn't something you want to share publicly, we can just not share this video at all or edit it out, because I don't want that getting in the way. But I also, by experience, know that often when I have conversations with people, I might say something that you think, oh, how did he say that? And then you can go back and look at the videotape. I mean, it's just
Right.
easy.
Okay, cold. I'll definitely talk about it. Well, I've had quite a few experiences. I've been hospitalized. Oh man, I've been hospitalized probably like 7 or 8 times in the last 2 years, really seriously, bad. And but this one experience I had was, well, I had cancer, and so I had Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is I had I was basically stage 4. So
Oh my.
when I was getting in, I was basically dying. I was kind of living in and out of a dream world. I was being misdiagnosed every other week. It was just hell. And so when I got into chemo, my chemo sessions were 12 sessions over the course of 6 months, one every other week. And I took to very bad to chemo, about the worst anyone can possibly go. And there's no reason why. I was healthy, I kind of relatively.
Except for the cancer.
Even, Hodgkin's, they call it, people look at, they go, well, that has a great success rate, and so you'll be fine. And that's the one they solved. That's what everyone told me. That's the one they solved. And I said, well, okay. And so I got, immunotherapy drugs and all that stuff. And it was right around the 9th treatment, and I had become pretty, badly mangled from the chemo. But I was doing it, but it was really bad. And so my doctor came to me and said, there's this shortage of drug. There was this shortage of drug when we started, and now it's come back. And so we can put this back into the chemo cocktail. And we feel that that could improve your chances by 1 or 2% of success here. And so, and I knew that the drug was very dangerous, but it's administered all the time, but it's called bleomycin. And, but I had this feeling. I said, something's going to happen with that. But I just shoved it away and went. And my fiance took me and sorry, I haven't talked about that. I went to the infusion. I got the infusion. Infusion takes about 4 hours. And I was such a bad case that I would have to take so many drugs, And so I was probably on I think 15 to 17 drugs when I would leave the chemo. Yeah, I was crazy on drugs. So they give it to me. They go, well, we want to make sure you're okay because you're kind of a weird case. So They watch me for 45 minutes. Nothing happens. I look a little weird, like usual. I get in the car. We're driving home. It's about a 45-minute drive from San Francisco. And all of a sudden, I'm just talking to my fiance, and I just feel everything shutting down. And so I look at her and I say, Sally, drive to the hospital right now. I'm not going to be able to talk in a few seconds. Go. And she looked at me and said, what? And then I just went unconscious.
You could feel it coming.
Oh yeah, because I could tell that I was I couldn't speak. The words, I could have the words in my head, but not in my mouth. And my legs started going boom, boom, hitting against the car door. Like I was having really bad tremors in my hands and legs. So then I pass out, and she's like, this was really sudden. This was like, I was having a normal conversation. Within a minute, I was unconscious. When I was unconscious, I saw a tunnel. At the end of a tunnel it was black around it, and then at the end of the tunnel was 2 doors. In between was a teal divider. I don't know why I remember that. And I was going towards it very quickly, like I felt like I was rocketing towards it. And then she slapped me, and I woke up. And she shook me, and she said, stay here. And I said, huh? Where am I? And she said, we're going to the hospital. And then I went back out. And then I went back to the tunnel. And so I'm going back to and then she's hitting me again. So I keep waking up, and she's just grabbing me and slapping me the whole time. So then I'm starting to come to, but then the tremors had become so crazy that I could not move. I could not speak. I couldn't do anything. She put me they got me into the emergency hospital. They were awful. They didn't know what to do with me. And I was sitting there. Some of my family, my dad came, my dad, my brother, and my fiance were there. And something was in the room, and I thought I was going to die. And I knew that no one was going to help me because they didn't know what this was. It was so rare, and I was hallucinating really badly. And I just knew it was either I was going to live or I was going to die. That I felt that energy. The weight in the room was heavy, man. Yeah. And so my dad is looking at me, and I could tell by the way my brother and my dad were looking at me that they could tell that. And that was shocking. That was shocking that they were that scared. But then they couldn't admit it, so they were walking. And so I was sitting there, I'm looking at them, and I can't speak. And so I got all these thoughts, and I'm going, well, maybe I'm paralyzed. Maybe I'm just paralyzed because I can think. And I'm and then out of the left side of my vision, this is why I talked to Jordan, is in the wall, this insectoid type figure breaks out of the wall with pincer type things. And I don't know, I'm sure you've seen Hieronymus Bosch's painting.
Yeah.
Like those type of demons, and they're blue, and they were insect-like, and there was probably like 3 to 5 of them, and they were crawling out the wall towards me, and they were about this big, and I'm looking, and I was just, and I said, what the hell is going on? But I couldn't speak. And everything is shaking and everything, and they look like they're coming at me and that they're physically interacting with the wall. Then, at the same exact time, I look up above me, and there's this light, and I see these Native American men on horseback, and it's like, from like an old photo or something, and they're on these beautiful horses, and they have this torch. One of them has a torch, and they're just riding in this circle, in this carousel above me. And I looked at my dad and my brother, and they were all fake. That's what I felt, that they were.
Your dad and your brother were fake.
They were fake. They were denying that this experience was sacred, that their son and brother could be gone, and that they weren't men enough to just go, oh my God, this is so horrible. Let me just be with you. You know what I mean? They couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And but then I see the Native Americans, and I'm going, oh my God, and I'm horrified. And then but as soon as I saw these men on horseback, I immediately said, that's my mother's brother named Tommy. And he killed himself in the 80s when he was 28. I felt, for some reason, I have no idea, because he was so small, it was hard, I couldn't make out the exact faces.
Right. But
I went, Tommy, that's Tommy. Tommy's going to save you. Tommy's saved your life. And I just sat there. I said, why do I think this? What? And everything, then the demons slowly went back into the wall. They kind of rolled back into the wall, and they just, the Native Americans kept spinning, and then it slowly went away. And then I lost my speech I lost the ability to communicate for 48 hours. They thought I was disabled. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the neurologist comes back and he goes, I've worked on this for hours. I've never seen anything like this. This is unbelievable. You have a fatal case of serotonin syndrome from a drug that it cannot happen. It's a 1% of 1%, maybe even, less than that. And definitely could have died. And then slowly my speech came back, and that episode was the worst episode I've had. I've had one other serious, I've had multiple other serious hospitalizations, but I had one chemo that went really bad where I had to be hospitalized, and it was horrible, but it wasn't like that. And then another one where I did have serotonin syndrome from Zoloft, from prescribed antidepressants, and I hallucinated again, and I saw a very strange vision of in the paramedics car. This wasn't fatal. This was just, I was having tremors and the whole thing. I was hallucinating and going unconscious, but I knew that I would hope that I wasn't in the fatal kind of area there, and but I saw these dogs. I felt this spirit in the paramedic car. That God was looking out for me, and I didn't know why. Because I shouldn't feel that way. I'm not safe. Nothing about the situation is safe. So why?
Yeah.
And I'm a kind of nihilistic guy, you know what I mean? That's kind of my mind frame, is kind of being a cynical pessimist. And so when I saw kind of God, I was like, well, I've been reading the Bible, and I have been kind of asking, well, is this true?
Yeah.
How does this connect to my experience?
Yeah.
That's really what I've been trying to figure out, because I tried to figure out the question of evil. I mean, I was like, I had lost my marbles a little bit, but just really quickly in the vision that I saw, the second vision, I saw the spirit, and I said, well, if this theology is true, then where is Satan? And as soon as I said that, and I was hallucinating, I saw these Rottweilers running after me in this weird frame, and they were like these little chaotic dogs. And I heard a voice, and it said, "There he is." Huh. And it was little dogs, and then it went, and it just was obliterated in this kind of weird fire. I know this stuff is so out there, but
well, this, I mean, let me say something about your stories, because in our culture, people don't tell stories like this because they don't tell stories like this publicly because there's a stigma attached to it.
Yeah.
But as a pastor, people have experiences like this, and they're like, you know, so then pastor, well, you're not supposed to tell. So then they sit down and they tell me a story, and like, you know, something like you're telling me, they're often different, but wow. So how have these experiences changed you?
Oh, everything about me has changed.
Wow.
I went from pretty well. I was a egocentric artist, I guess I would describe myself, and someone who was always looking for truth, but wasn't actually seeking it. Loved to talk about ideas and loves to talk about life and death and not actually experience anything with it. But
wow.
Yeah,
Talk about getting what you ask for and not wanting it.
Yeah. But the most important thing it's done for me is it brought me to Christianity. To me, that was the whole point. It was I either continue and I die, or and not that, Christianity is some contract to make me live. It's kind of the opposite. I found that when I thought I was going to die and people around me thought I was going to die, I didn't care about anything that I cared about before. That everything came off, and all I cared about were these principles that I couldn't see, and that I found that Paul was talking about in his letters a lot, and but it made me reach out to God. It made me get so angry at God. I cursed out God. I was in a ward of where I had no immunity. My immune system dropped, so I became neutropenic, and so I was on this ward full of just sick children. And all my friends were coming in with like masks and gloves, and I mean, it was bad. And then they're coming in and they're going, well, you haven't had chemo. You could have cancer. We got to get you in chemo, but you have the flu and you could die from pneumonia. So we don't know what to do with you, and it was just like, and then so I got in a real argument with God. I've always believed in God, but I've never, not the Christian sense, I guess, of God. And I got so mad. I got so angry. Not about me, really. It was like about being in this ward full of the sick and the dead and all these innocent people. And I wasn't innocent, but there were so many innocent people.
Yeah. And that God had somehow violated a contract. And
yes. Yeah. And it was so much worse than I thought. That the pit of suffering. Sometimes this is what I think is so interesting about Jordan, is Jordan has no idea sometimes, I think, what he's talking about. Like in terms of death in life. Sometimes I'm like, oh man, like the pit of despair is like, chaos is really chaos where you actually think physical rules stop applying. I actually started thinking that way. I started thinking that perhaps maybe cups would fly off a table and hit the wall for no reason. That's the world now. The world didn't exist rationally. It couldn't. And, but yeah, it put me in some weird relationship with Christianity. All of a sudden, I went to the Bible because I had nothing else. I haven't had a lot of support from my family, and no one around me really cares about God or anything. And so I thought about all those people on the prison, prison shows,
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's a common thing for people to go into prison. I mean, if you go to YouTube and search for Son of Sam and his story, I mean, he was an untreated schizophrenic, becomes the 44 caliber killer when I was young and living in the New York area. And then he goes into prison and they put him on treatment for schizophrenia, and he just falls into a pit of despair because here he wakes up from this illness and his life is over. He's life without parole. And then of course God finds him. We usually say he finds God, but I think it's God finds him.
Yes.
And if you look at him now, he's a different man. He's a different man.
Well, that's interesting.
So this drove you to the Bible. Now, did you go to church or anything? Did you have much Christianity in you?
I went to a Lutheran school when I was from kindergarten to third grade.
Okay.
And I sung in the chapel, but I wasn't baptized or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty rare around. I mean, like, just even having that background, no one around me, it's almost ridicule in my generation, or in the Bay Area especially. I went to high school and middle school here. It's like, you're literally crazy if you believe in God.
Yeah.
So I was always on the outs that way, and then I always felt that Christianity, there was something there that there was a complexity to it, and also I liked the pastor had the kind of a goodness about him, and I always remembered that. I always
Even
remember
from when you were a kid.
Yeah, he was a good man. He wasn't doing anything crazy or anything. It was just so the whole media, when I would watch the media, I remember the Catholic Church thing happened and all that stuff, and I was like, well, this guy seems all right, he doesn't seem like he's raping anyone. So I always kind of knew. I don't know. Sometimes now I think about it, it's like Christ was on the back burner.
Yeah.
On some weird level. I'm like, oh, I know that's the truth, but
yeah. And it's I often think about the story of the Apostle Paul, and in the book of Acts, when Stephen is being killed, he's holding their coats, and then on the road to Damascus, Jesus shows up and blinds him, takes away his sight, and sends a poor Christian over to, you got to go pray for Paul. The guy's like, that guy? I don't want to get anywhere near that guy. God says, no, you're going to do it.
Yeah.
God does what he wants. And he's, people sometimes think they want to bet God and play games with God. And I just think, you're out of your mind.
Yeah, seriously.
He doesn't, if he wants to do something, he doesn't play around.
Yes.
And he'll take the kinds of risks that we look at and say, no, you're not supposed to do that. And he's like, who are you to tell me what I'm supposed to do?
Right.
So true.
Yes.
Oh, man. Wow. So you started reading the Bible, and then, did it start making sense to you more then after everything you had been through, or what was that like?
It was the craziest experience ever. I kind of ran out, I ran out of stuff to watch, movies, whatever.
That's right.
I hate the media, you know what I mean? It's like, man, like, what do you do? And so Jordan kind of was, he was great with book recommendations. He told me to read Answer to Job and a lot of Jung and all that. But when I read the Bible, I was just, well, first of all, I was like, okay, I want to read it quickly, and I want to read it, from Genesis forward. Like, I don't want to skip around. I want to go through Kings, I want to do it, and so. And I want to do it quickly. I want to see my initial reaction. And I think I
Wow.
read it like in a month or something. I mean, I was like, that's all I did. And I couldn't get over seeing God's perspective.
Hmm.
That just, it wasn't like the stories or thinking about a specific story. It was like, wow, I'm so ignorant and egotistical that I never even considered that. Like, I believed in God, but I didn't really consider God, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And, so a lot of those descriptions, especially of the prophets, was so overwhelming to me. And that the seriousness of it, I liked. I went to one church service and I got so sick that I had to leave, but the pastor started saying all these quotes and he's like, it's not as ominous as it sounds. He's saying all these like super intense things. And I was like, no, it really is. Like, it really, really is.
Yeah.
It's for people who have nothing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't like this little like Disneyized version of it. It's sad to me.
Yeah.
But,
Well, and what you describe, I think, is in my experience, when we have health, security, stability, affluence, it's something. It's a game we play. It's not real. We're full of ourselves, but it's the people who don't have those things that America makes lousy Christians. It does. How can it not? And prison. Some of our best Christians are made in prison and in hospitals.
Yeah.
And among, I've never made an atheist homeless person. Now, a lot of them are nuts. Now, don't get me wrong. And many of them have. Just yesterday, my wife found a guy and he was having trouble and she tried to help. I said, well, let's go help him. And, we picked the guy up and he was, all the stuff that I've dealt with for years. He was soused and mentally ill and, brought him back to his crappy group home. But, if he'd sit down and talk with the guy, I'm sure God is very real to him.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now we're surrounded by all of these things that are wonderful things. Yeah. But you had that taken away when your health was taken away.
Yeah, and it's weird being in this weird, like, well, right now I'm on my last bout here, not with cancer. I survived cancer, but it's just been a nightmare ever since. It's been awful. I went to psychologists and I went to Jordan. I went to the best psychologist, and they gave me drugs and all this stuff, and it's just destroyed me. I've been hospitalized so many times from it. I'm now on my last thing. This is it. I've been on this drug called Ativan, which is a benzo, for 2 years. It was prescribed during chemo, and now is I got a detox off of this, and then I'm done. And it's I'm on 4 months now. Fourth month. Can't leave during the day. Can't get in my car. It's just destroyed me, these drugs. That's one thing about Jordan that I would love to speak to him about. I think his stuff he says on Twitter about Zoloft, it drives me nuts. It drives me nuts. It's I get it for some people, but
I don't understand what you mean.
Oh, he really I think he takes antidepressants himself, and he really is positive about them. And after being through the ringer so many times, through every different type of drug, even antipsychotics, I think that's a dangerous thing to put out there for people. Like, I'm his audience,
Yeah.
and I know so many people go, oh, I'm depressed, man. I don't do anything all day. I should take Zoloft. And now they feel like they're on speed or whatever, and they think they're living life. And I mean, I almost, yeah, I got hospitalized from that. These drugs are, I cannot believe they prescribe these things.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with James a few number of weeks ago. He teaches psychology, and he said similar things about some of this stuff to me. And I've, again, as a pastor, a lot of experience with people with dealing with all kinds of mental illness. And what I see so often is that it's like they have this shelf full of drugs, and someone comes in and they're like, well, let's try this one. And give it to you for 2-3 weeks. And, well, how's it feel? Oh, okay. Well, let's try this one. Well, first we got to wean you off. And I'm just thinking, is this a science? Or back in the church I grew up with, we had a very well-meaning lady who did all kinds of crazy things. She had a drawer full of eyeglasses, and someone would come in that need eyeglasses. She's like, try these on. Try these on. It's just, I think that's what they do with psych meds. Give this a shot. It's like, I don't know. Do they know anything? Doesn't appear to me like they do.
I think, yeah, I really think people would be so shocked about that, like all the Newsweek articles and what everybody reads. When you get to the real deal, when you go even to the best hospital in the world, it won't, I mean, I hate to say it will matter, but the reality, when one of the first chemos I went to, I was, I'm trying to be all positive, and everyone's like, oh, you're just going to skate right through this. You're 28 years old. It's nothing. And then I remember this Filipino woman was all wrapped up in a big blanket in one of the infusion chairs, and she looked bad, she looked real bad. And she had her son there, and she looked at me with these sincere eyes, and she just said, good luck.
Yeah.
And I remember my dad looked at me like, good luck.
Yeah.
Like, and then shit hadn't gone downhill. Excuse me. It hadn't gone downhill that. So yeah. I always remember that that's really what it is. It's like, good luck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, that's been my experience with people too. People in my church who've had chemo, and I don't want to downplay what our medical establishment can do. I mean, because I've lived in the third world where there isn't any, and it's like, it's a really big deal. But at the same time,
yeah, yes, wow. There's a lot there.
Wow. Wow. So what do you need?
Wow. No one's asked me that. That's so weird. Man, I just need to talk to someone, to be honest. Because, I mean, now I'm like totally crazy. Everybody thinks I'm totally nuts, It was like even before the Christian thing, but now it's like, they're like, what the hell are you talking about? But
you're not alone. When I was a teenager, we had 2 houses down from us. A family lived there, and I remember the woman, the mother of the family, I was babysitting their kids or something. I was like 14, 15. And she comes home one day. I don't know how we got here, but she had died on the table, and she had been out for a number of minutes. And she told me her story. And I'm like a 14-year-old kid. And I'm just listening, and it's like, okay. People that, well, make a judgment on it. Well, I can't make a judgment on it. Yeah. And I grew up in a place where, not unlike the place I minister, where we live in this media world where we watch people on TV and we look at them in magazine covers and we think this is a normal script in life. And people who have experiences like you, well, there's no place for you. So we're going to call you crazy and we're going to put you over here and maybe you'll talk to some YouTube pastor. But, but it's not normal. We have no place to frame this. So why don't you go over there and be crazy someplace else? But it's not true. There's people all over the place.
Yeah.
So I really want you to know that you're not alone, and you're not crazy.
No, I appreciate it.
I know crazy. I see plenty of crazy. Not you.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
It's everyone too, but you're not the common crazy I see.
No, thanks.
So what do you need? You need someone to talk to.
Yeah, and talk about God, you know what I mean? Like, and man, just to pray with someone, like, I feel like I'm just so isolated, I'm just, and my family is they, like, I've been left alone a lot, in my life. And so the experience of getting cancer is not just about having cancer or getting chemo. What's amazing about it is all the things you learn about the people around you and how everyone that you thought you knew isn't what you knew. And that's been really hard, like my friends, I have nothing to talk about with my friends anymore. I just don't.
Because
I'm just too serious, I guess. I don't want to talk about Netflix movies for the next 35 years. I've had enough. I'm just kind of done. And yeah, it's just, and they're out living their lives and having these wonderful experiences, and my life has been somewhat depressing, and so yeah, there's not a lot, not anyone to really talk to, and
now, are you you mentioned earlier, you're just kind of shut in right now because of you just have to be by yourself?
Well, my fiance is taking care of me, which I'm really happy about, and I'm able to take a walk in the morning a little bit, and then every week I have to start to taper and cut the amounts, and then I go into a spiral, and then I can't get up for about a week, and then we start all over again, and so I'm always kind of up in the air. We've canceled our wedding 5 times, so it's awful.
Wow. Did you have any church connections with anyone?
No.
Oh.
You're the first person, because I would go online and look at churches, and oh my gosh, like all they talk about is politics. Like I was just like, I just want to pray, and there doesn't seem to be places to pray. And yeah, so I was just bummed out when I would listen to even like some of the sermons, and a lot around me is like, that's hip right now.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know. Because politics seems so real, and God seems so not.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah.
And I see it all the time.
Yeah.
That is so short-sighted. You would think among a community of people where 100% of us know we will die, we might think a little about it. But no, because we as a culture have managed to bubble wrap ourselves, and well, that's going to happen off in the future. Only part of the reason that churches are full of old people is that they started going when they were young. The other reason church is full of old people is because often at some point in either their health goes bad or they're in their 60s or 70s, they begin to say, crap, I ain't going to be around.
Right.
I got to think about this.
Right. Yeah.
And you just got there early.
Right.
And you got there in a way that you have time to think about it.
Yeah, which is, very lucky.
Yeah.
You have to process it a little bit, but yeah.
Wow. Well, obviously I'm sorry to hear about your medical condition, but I'm also deeply sorry to hear about your isolation. And we live in a world where we can, you and I can, neither of us have to leave the house and we can see each other on a video screen. And that's an awesome thing.
Yeah.
But we're not made to be alone.
Yeah. Well, I'm blessed with my fiance. She saved my life.
Yeah, I guess so. And that when you said, take me to the hospital, I'm not going to be able to talk in another minute.
No.
She didn't say, huh?
She did for a second, but I didn't know. But, she's amazing. She's amazing. She's been through so much.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I did. I don't know if he contacted you or not, but if he hasn't, I'll contact him. Can you receive visitors?
Well, no, I'm gonna meet him. Mark.
Good. Oh, good.
Yeah. I'm really excited to talk to him.
And he's a great guy. When he moved, when he took the call to the church in Alameda, he, younger pastors need older pastors as mentors, and so I've been his mentor for a number of years, and he's a super guy. So
yeah, thanks for hooking me up with him.
Wow. Well, we have some more. We have a few more minutes. Is there anything else you want to touch on?
Yeah, wow, man, I just talked about nothing for.
No, you didn't talk about it. Well, let me tell you. I mean, again, it'll be up to you whether or not you allow me to post this. But
I'm sorry I didn't let you talk at all.
No. And people hear me talk all the time. I do lots of talking. But your story is so important because I hear stories like yours regularly.
Really?
But these are, everyone is unique, okay?
Yeah.
But the elements of it, the medical system cannot save you. You have experiences that in our secular culture, you lose status if you share things like this with a good number of people.
Right.
You have become an inconvenient person for your friends and family. Not just because of your medical situation, but also because of the changes that you've gone through, given what you've seen and experienced. There's a world of people out there like that. And they're often isolated and alone.
Mm-hmm.
And when I asked you what you needed, your answer does not surprise me. I remember talking, he's no longer alive. I remember talking to a guy who was just kind of living a worldly life, had a medical procedure, and then went into a coma. And God came to him in the coma and said, he was raised in a church but had given it up, and came to him and said, I'm going to wake you up and you're going to be different. And he was different. And he stumbles into my church. First time, he was terrifically overdressed because all he'd been to was black churches. Next week he came quite a bit less dressed up. And then we got to know each other, and, God had changed him from the inside out. His values were completely different, but his relationships with his family, because of the massive transformation in him, nobody quite knew how to relate to him anymore. Now, unfortunately, he had other medical things come up, and he within a 2-3 years of that experience, he had passed away again. And which to me was just such a sad thing, because he was growing in Christ, and he was finding new life, and he was sorting out his life, and things were going, and then God took him. The thing that I saw, though, growing up with my father's ministry, was that my father told me that again and again. God brings people to us. They're here for 1, 2, 3, 5 years, and then God takes them. And it's like, it's hard on the church. I could use some of these saints to stick around a little while.
Yeah.
But, hey, God's boss. So, but like I said, you don't play with God.
Right.
Anyone who has had any experience at all knows you just don't play with someone like that.
That's very cool.
But we don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. Your story's far more interesting than mine.
Oh no, that was great.
So no, you didn't talk about nothing. I
didn't ask.
A lot of people can benefit from your story.
No, I appreciate that. Well, thanks, Paul.
So yeah, if you have, like I said, we still have a little bit of time. So if you want to go into anything else, we can. Or if you're tired, we can wrap up. It's up to you.
I can't see the clock. How long do we have?
Well, it's 3:22 now, and my next one is 4. So if we stop at like 3:45, that gives me a few minutes to go to the bathroom and do a couple of errands and things before my 4 o'clock.
Cool. Oh well, I was curious. Well, I've been reading a little bit about Calvinism, and it's interesting. Like I've seen some of the kind of critiques about. I was curious about some of your views on predestination. Because I'm trying to sort these things out, and part of my experience is that there seems to be a truth that I can't go to God because that's dependent on so many things that God allows me to have. And so I don't really understand the argument the other way. I'm curious on like just what the view is on that. Yeah.
Well, the first thing to say is that when someone hears Calvinism, they almost always think predestination. Yeah. That is actually not from Calvin. That's more from later. So about 100 years after Calvin, these issues about predestination in the Calvinist Arminian fight really got engaged, but that's about 100 years after Calvin. Calvin, for the most part, articulated the common church view of predestination that the Roman Catholic Church and Martin Luther, the only thing is he mentioned double predestination, which got all the attention, and then that a whole big theological thing just took off after that. So when people hear Calvinism, they hear predestination, and off they go. And it's like, well, it's kind of like the wooden slide has been worn, and once people hit it, it's like, wing, down we go. And it's like, okay, leave that over there. Don't worry about that. That's a tiny little part of who John Calvin was and what he wrote. Yeah. I think the idea, and when Tim Keller, who's a celebrity pastor in New York City, who does a really good job on a lot of things, and when he's often asked about it, he says, well, I'll talk about how the Bible talks about it, because that's supposed to be where Calvin gets it from. I think the best way to understand it is the fact that none of us, I think it's similar to, I think it's what you just said in terms of, well, how could I find God? Well, I'm running around and I'm living in America and I'm able to fill my life with all sorts of diversion. I think I'm going to live forever, even if another part of my brain knows I won't. I'm going to manage things because I think I'm smarter than God and I can critique him. And, and then something happens and you change. And sometimes experientially, the path feels like, well, I was looking for God. And I think, again, I use the example of Paul and his conversion. When you ask the question, well, who finally gets God and who doesn't? I don't know that we can answer that question. And so the best answer for that question is God knows, and leave it at that.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. I'm just curious on, because when I I told my dad, oh, I'm reading John Calvin. He said, oh, what's the point? He said, why do anything? That was his response.
Right.
And but I keep just coming back to my experience. I go, well, I couldn't even think about God if it wasn't for God giving me that ability. That seems really tied in here.
Right. Right.
And so, so I've been thinking a lot about that.
Yeah. And Calvinism is not determinism. But again, these are, most of us have, for almost everything in the world, just a tiny little, a couple of bytes of information that we can keep with something in terms of association. So Calvinism, determinism, that's where people go with it. So, Puritanism, being strict. So that's, but if you start reading John Calvin, well, why would he admonish all kinds of things if he didn't believe people had the will to either listen or reject?
Yeah. Well, okay. Big topics.
Yeah.
Well, I was also curious. I had a question about art for you.
Art.
Yeah, because being an artist, I haven't been able to do much of it in about a year, but there's always been this. I know that Protestants have always kind of had this touchy relationship, which is weird because I really like a lot of the Protestant artists. I think they're really strong, but how do you view I guess art and culture in a Christian? I mean, almost like the first Reformed movie. How do you live a Christian life in this world?
Well, my tradition, the Christian Reformed Church, has traditionally, but not exclusively, been a fairly plain church tradition. That's changing now a bit. I think it grew out of, and actually, talking to Jonathan Peugeot and, all the conversations that I've been doing, I've been thinking more about this lately. There was an instinctive hesitance to be careful about physical images because of how quickly we bond with them. And, especially having lived the cross-cultural life I have. So you look at, let's say, and I don't know, if we post this, I'll catch comments on this, but so what? If you look at Jesus up on the top of the dome, you can't look at Jesus and not see the color of his skin. And just issues are going to be raised by that, and potentially stumbling blocks. Now, people will rightly say, yeah, but the Bible does image God in language, and that's true. And all of these things are representation. But the commandment, the second commandment, not to make graven images of God, is amazingly perceptive in terms of how quickly we try to appropriate something that God makes and turn it into us. And so in other words, if God were a baker, would we make a cake and then say, here is your God? I think a baker would say, I make cakes. I'm not a cake. An artist would say, I make art. I am not art. So to me, but I do think that God gives gifts, And actually, if you look at the biblical accounts of the tabernacle and the temple, they were filled with art and representation. So I think churches should be places of art. It's just that when it comes, we've got to be a little bit careful about images in terms of just how powerful they are with shaping people's imaginary, and therefore by shaping they limit. And God clearly has a problem with us limiting him. And in many ways, theologians and pastors are the worst violators of that, because so often with our books and our sermons, we limit God. And if you're going to take something from Calvinist sovereignty of God, it means God does what he wants. And, shut up, people. It's just shut up. With Job, place your hand over your mouth.
Yeah, I've kind of noticed that with like even some of the pastors that I've seen online. Like I've listened to John Piper, it's like I'll see his sermons and I'll be like, whoa, those are crazy. Those are so good. And then he'll be asked the most ridiculous question, like about like, hairdos or something random, you know what I mean? And then but I understand that he has to answer it. But then I'm like, but this is just his opinion. This doesn't really need to be like put out there. But I guess everybody's looking to him.
Well, yeah. That's part of the idolatry of celebrity.
Yeah.
And same with the Jordan Peterson crowd.
Oh yeah.
It's a natural phenomenon.
Yeah.
And it's always been with the church. A lot of the church fathers, they were celebrity pastors, but you got to be careful with it.
Yeah.
Because we're all just people.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have to fill the time if you're tired, man. It's okay. It's
no,
your really time. It's up to you.
I never get to talk about any of this stuff. My girlfriend's like, oh man, John Calvin.
Yeah. It's so funny when I started the meetup, when we went around the room, one of the most common things was, I try to talk to my girlfriend about this or my wife about this. And they're like, just shut up about it, okay? I know you listen to your weird videos, Jordan Peterson, blah, 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 blah. I don't want to hear about it.
It's so true. It's so true. But she likes him though. She likes Jordan a lot. She went to we went to the San Francisco little speaking, the 12
did you go to the simulation one too?
No.
Oh, okay. I was at that one. That was a good one to miss. Better to go to the other one.
Okay. Yeah, I was really blown away by that.
Yeah.
I can't believe all the women. I was like, there were so many women there.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Unlike seemingly on the online version, I've probably got 95% of the people who contact me are men, which is cool. I don't have a problem with that. But there are women out there, and I see more and more of them in the comment section.
Yeah, I think it'll change.
Yeah.
Your audience grows.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. So I feel like I just watched your other interview with I really liked that the Eastern Orthodox young guy.
Oh, Adam?
Yeah, I liked him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Guy.
Yeah, it's been fun how the channel has developed. And when I started this, I didn't have any idea of, well, I'm just going to talk to people online and I'm going to post the conversations. I had no idea to do that, but it just, I talked to Peterson and I posted that.
Yeah.
And Josh, who gave me the time, he had posted one. So I thought, let's just post, let's have talks with people. And I only post about half the talks I do, but maybe less. But a number of people have written me and said, oh, the conversations are the best part of your channel. And I think that's right, because, here's your story. And again, your story is pretty special, but everybody's story, it sounds so cliche. It sounds like Barney the Purple Dinosaur, but people are amazing.
Oh, yeah.
And what I look at, what God has done in this world and think, I know God loves stories because he's made billions of them. No two of them the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, and part of the reason I'm not with the materialist, and I do not in any minute believe this is all there is, because I'm thinking God made this flood of glory. He's not going to waste it. And that's why, even though on one hand, I believe, obviously the illness and the sickness and the suffering that you have endured, this should not be. On the other hand, I don't think God's going to waste it. Don't think he's going to waste it.
I agree with that. Yeah, there's a weird sensation that when everything is going wrong, but then this connection to God, I got this sensation after cancer that everything was as it should be, but I didn't know why, because everything seemed so awful.
Yeah.
Hard, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I've had the experience in, really hard times in my own life, when it was in those times that my communion with God was the sweetest. And so often in the other times of my life where things are easy and comfortable, where I'm a slacker.
Yeah.
But it's like, boy, hard to put it into words. I don't want to go back into that pain. Everything in me says, and when I'm in the foothills of those kinds of times again, it's like, I everything in my body, I don't want to go there. But part of me also knows that if I do go there, God will be with me in it.
Right.
And it doesn't get rid of the pain,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not alone in it. And God is enough. He really is. So, but my suffering hasn't been anything like yours, and I know that.
Oh yeah, what I always think of is gulags. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh,
I'm blessed, man. I'm doing great.
You're suffering, and they're administering it, but they're not trying to kill you. We're really trying to help you. We're just going to make you outrageously sick and feel awful, and it might kill you, but maybe it'll help.
Yeah, it's very strange. Yeah, I feel blessed with modern medicine, but I also hate it and think it's, well, I guess I think it's more just the pride of it. There's something about it that with doctors, a lot of them that I've experienced, it's like if they see anything out of their experience range, it didn't happen. It can't happen. But
there are also wise doctors out there that I've met doctors before who they understand their gig, and they know how limited they are. And Francis Collins, became a Christian and has done a lot of writing on origins and science and those kinds of issues. But, reading some of his stuff, how he became a Christian because he saw people like you in the hospital who, from his secular point of view, these people should be miserable and maybe thinking about doctor-assisted suicide, but he saw them and said, something else is going on here. It's like that. It's like a story that I read in one of my sermons, one of my favorite stories about Mabel, who is a woman in a terrible nursing home, and her face has been eaten by cancer, and the place smells like urine, and she's lost her sight, and she can't smell, and she can barely hear, and she can't taste. And a young seminarian goes to visit her and gives her a flower, and she says, she basically thanks him and graciously and says, no, give it to somebody else. I can't really see it or smell it. And And he starts to converse with her, and he learns that she is enormously happy. And he's like, why on earth are you happy? Well, I have Jesus. What do you mean you have Jesus? You're sitting here in this terrible nursing home. Nobody ever comes to visit you. And no, and she says, no, I'm very fortunate. He's like, and so John Ortberg tells it in the book, The Life You've Always Wanted, in a chapter. It actually comes from another pastor, but it's true. You see it. It's not common, but you find it. And once you see it, you take off your shoes because you're on holy ground, and you stop being an idiot.
Yeah. Yep.
Or at least you'd sometimes stop being an idiot.
Yeah.
We're human beings. Well, Nick, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for talking to me.
And we could talk again. And I hope my friend his church is just down there in Alameda. I'm glad you have an appointment with them. And let me pray for you. I never close these things with prayer. When I visit with people as a pastor, I always close with prayer. But would it be okay if I pray with you?
Of course. Yeah, I love that.
Okay, let me pray for you. Lord, in the book of Romans, in chapter 8, you tell us that when we don't know the words to use to pray, that the Spirit groans. And we hear, Lord, in the same chapter that creation groans, and it's waiting for your children to be revealed so that creation can be liberated from decay. And Lord, I can't answer questions of why or how or should for Nick, but I pray, Lord, that you would be with him. And Lord, I do pray for his healing. I do ask, Lord, that you would heal his body. But more so, Lord, I pray for his soul and his spirit, that you would be with him. May he have a tangible sense of your presence in his life. May he understand that you will never leave him nor forsake him. May he come to believe that he can trust in you with whatever comes down the road, whether it's at the infusion center or the doctor's office or whatever the coming times bring to him. And I pray, Lord, that you would give him opportunities to share his story, to share what you've done in his heart, and to know that he's not alone. Lord, we believe that there's a cloud of witnesses. And Lord, in that cloud, there are millions whose names are not remembered in our textbooks or on our monuments, but you know them all. And so I pray, Lord, that you would give Nick a sense that he is surrounded by the saints, and that as C.S. Lewis noted in Screwtape Letters, that the church down here is a muddled, stumbling mess so often, but from the other side, as we see from the book of Revelation, is an army of myriad upon myriad who have been washed by your blood. So I pray, Lord, that you would bless him. And I ask, Lord, that you would heal him. And Lord, I pray that you would let his story touch others, those who are living on their own, those who feel isolated, those who can't tell their story because no one will believe them. I thank you, Lord, for his fiancée that has been caring for him. And I pray, Lord, that you would give her strength. So, Lord, hear my words. as I pray them in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Wow. Thank you, Paul.
You're very welcome.
Thanks, Paul.
Well, we'll talk again. You have the link, and hopefully one of these days, who knows? Maybe my some of my meetup folks will say, "We got to do a meetup over in the Bay Area." So who knows? And I'm sure some will see this video and say, "Hey, you know." So we'll see what happens.
Okay, awesome.
Thanks, Nick.
All right, take care.
Take care.